You call that radio?
You call that radio?
Goodbye to the people who hated on me.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in a minute.
That's mad, isn't it? Is this a Netflix thing?
It's actually a podcast.
What the fuck's a podcast?
You know, it's kind of like a radio show.
Call that radio?
Yeah.
Just popped in there.
And is there a way we can do something like that?
I couldn't help it.
By injection
Just
inside
popped in there.
Yeah, I think so, because I think just paint in general, because I think like my poem is in my painting.
No, cut. Hello and welcome to You Call That Radio. Tonight we have Graeme Duff, from Alan Partridge to Harry Potter, my personal favourite, Ideal, which he wrote and starred in, and many other things. The Nebulous radio series, which is amazing, and Dr. Terrible's House of Horrible, all that stuff. Graeme Duff, and a true legend in the house tonight. We've got Sky in the house. We've got Alan in the house. How you doing, guys? Sorry I wasn't here yesterday. I was on a secret mission. Was actually I needed to do a shift. I was doing some extra work. It was 12 hour shift, I think, and it was 14 hours. I was at the house. It was a long cycle there and back as well. So by the time I arrived home, the show was just finishing. So that's the first time I've not showed for one of my own shows, but I had to, the podcast doesn't quite cut it. I need to make money elsewhere as well. So thank you very much to Joe Dark, who did a fantastic show of hosting and producing. And shouts to Lynn and Pussy Power. It looked like a good show that I missed. So, but Soundhouse Sundays will be back for the final instalment of this series anyway, this Sunday with Monarchs. Yeah, what else was I going to say? And also, actually, Joe, I mean, I'm lucky I've got a job to come back to here. She did such a good job. But Joe also features in the new Jackal Trades video, which launched today. I wasn't sure whether to drop it on the Jackal Trades page or They Call That Radio page. Everyone told me I should drop it in the Jackal Trades page pretty much, but there's hardly any subscribers there. So I just went, fuck it, and launched it on the You Call That Radio page. So if you don't mind, I'm going to play that, and then we'll get Graeme Duff on, which I'm really excited about. This video is the first music video I've edited with a new computer. So I just want to thank everybody who's been supporting the show and supported my birthday as well. This would not be possible without you, and it was just such a brilliant experience to edit where things actually work, because every music video I've ever edited before, you can only make so many moves before the thing starts crashing and doing your nutting. And for someone with a low concentration span, it's not ideal to just have to wait on things loading all the time. So it was a really good experience. I did it all, and I did some of it ages ago, and then I finished it last night. Shouts to Martin Windybank, who filmed some of this over the summer. What else? Shouts to Physics on the Beat, Conscious, who mixed it, Astronomic, who recorded it, Thomas Ray, who mastered it, and of course Joe Dark, our special guest host last night. So this is the tune. It's called Setting the Scene on Fire, and this is just setting the scene for a brand new Jackal Trades video, which is called Scottish Album of the Year, which will be dropping next week before they announce the real winner of Scottish Album of the Year. And so I just thought it was only right to set the scene first before I drop that next week. So this is setting the scene on fire.
I remember cheeky reefers in the empty 3 litres in a large and furnace flat with the small wall heaters. Freezing frosty jack with the prepay meters. Emergency credit where the beeping would defeat us. Tonight the pipe's leaking and it's a shite season. Found out your best friend is guilty of treason. What a backstabbing thief and has been heathen. Just forget the daft lies the cretin's been breathing. Ignore the excuses, don't eat up any reason. Don't provoke them or feed them. Starve the demons of feeling. Roll a J and I tear him at a PTA meeting. No stone left unturned. Adrenaline is fleeting. Did he deserve that beating? Cause he threatened to leave them. They built Jack, which is like a kick in the teeth. They built him like butane, breathing for exam, cheating or intervening, ketamine before Olympic skiing. So I'm not sure if they could or chose not to teach him. Another life ago, mother freaking out frequent. Out from wayward children and a lack of proper sleeping. 4 a.m. door creaking, the sound of kids creeping out the gate, smoking weed, underage, getting steaming, suicide on your doorstep leaves a crew reeling. It's a godless scheme here that is surely due, meaning don't do diligence, just go in the army seems appealing. We kicked the ball against the wall, the no ball game saying counts as a goal, even hanging around is against the law, and a car on the lawn from the night before. We kicked the ball against the wall, the no ball game saying counts as a goal, even hanging around here is against the law, and a car on the lawn from the night before. A merry down riot, a chip shop diet, techno Brit pop and hip hop transmitted from a sky dish on a chip box with a knock-off aerial on digital, blaring for free like a fairy tale. Who's the best looking? Who's the best fighter? Who has fake ID? Who's got a CD writer? From rapping swings to rapping freeze, from climbing trees to burning trees. Then the guy with the weed started punting ease. 14 and driving cars being factories. Then a rising knife crime. Guys started dying and Simon said, why we gotta put a school tie on? Who you fancy, what games you got? Oh, my cousin works for Sony, so I own the lot. Sometimes imagination is all you got, and pretend friends stop you losing the plot. We kicked the ball against the wall, the no ball game saying counts as a goal, even hanging around is against the law, and a car on the lawn from the night before. We kicked the ball against the wall, the no ball game saying counts as a goal, even hanging around here against the law, and a car on the lawn from the night before.
Brothers and sisters,
Is that you, Daniel? Are you before me?
Call that radio.
You call that radio.
Hello, yes, this is Dog.
As you call that radio, and I believe Graeme will be joining us in a little minute. Just want to say, you should be watching us on YouTube now. I think Facebook said they banned us from broadcasting for 30 days. I appealed it and they apologised. So I think that we are on Facebook again. But that is, just because we're on Facebook doesn't mean you should be watching us on Facebook. The very fact that they're threatening us in the first place says it's time's up. Time's up. Let's go to watch us on YouTube. YouTube.com/you call that radio. It'll look a bit better. It will sound a bit better. And or go to twitch.tv/you call that radio as well. Coming up this week, we have, obviously Graeme will be here in a little second. Tomorrow night, one of my favourite albums of the year so far, Mungo's Hi-Fi and Marina P. They made an amazing album called Soul Radio. And they're going to be Marina live from France, Mungo's Hi-Fi live from Glasgow, talking about their amazing collaboration and their career. On Wednesday, we have Becky Wallace, who's having an unviable special with all the unviable females of the Scottish music industry getting involved in that. And on Thursday, we have the Scottish comedian Martin Miller, who lives over in Alabama now. He's taking his Scottish part to the other side of the world, so he'll be joining us on Thursday night. And on Friday, we're going to be paying tribute to an amazing poet, comedian, artist and friend, Sarah Syndigo, and what would and should have been her 40th birthday. We're going to have lots of poetry, music, stories, comedy, and if anyone wants to get involved in that, they can do so by giving us, just sending us a wee message, and let's put a good night on for Sarah. Angela's loving the new tune. Thank you. The sooner we can all ditch Facebook, the better. I agree. Love it. Great track. Thank you very much. Why the hat? Have you had a haircut? I sometimes wear a hat. Evening. Cartoony. Fucking class. Love that show. So did I. Hopefully I can switch to Graeme Duff just now. Graeme, can you hear me?
I can indeed. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, mate. Thank you very much for doing this. I'm a massive fan. And I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today.
It's a pleasure, man. I only just made it. I literally got through my front door about 10 minutes ago. So I've just sat down, had a glass of water, but I'm ready to go now.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. And so is that, did you say that filming began? Were you filming? Is that the first bit of filming you've been doing since lockdown, or?
No, it's the third bit of filming. I started. We started making this documentary about the band Wire about 2 years ago now, and we were due to have finished by now, but because society collapsed, we had to stop filming. So we just started again about 3 weeks ago. So yeah, I've just been interviewing this afternoon. I was interviewing Jake Chapman of the Chapman Brothers, which was a real buzz because I'm such a fan, and he was great, and he was really articulate, but really funny and warm. So it was good. But then I had to get back from London to Brighton. So yeah, I'm just still getting my breath back.
Still catching your breath. Is well, I've been to Brighton a few times, man. Actually, there was a little bit of on the video that I just played there was actually taken from Brighton Fringe. So it's a couple of times I've played Brighton Fringe, and I just love the whole vibe of it. And for people that I know that speak there seems to be quite a lot of people that maybe from the arts who lived in London, but they just can't be arsed living in London anymore. But Brighton's like the best of both worlds. You're still close to London, but you're just getting a bit, just a nicer vibe in general, innit?
It's a wash with media tarts, to be honest with you, Brighton. I won't lie to you. I came here when I was 18 to go to college, and I've just never wanted to leave. And I always say to people, whatever it is you're into, there's plenty of it in Brighton. So yeah, it's a good place to live, definitely.
I loved it, man. It was just such an excellent vibe. The few times that I have been there. But I mean, the first time, so I'm aware of your work. I'm a massive fan of Ideal. It was one of my favourite, and still is one of my favourite comedies of all time. So I would just like to start by talking a little bit about that, man. I mean, how did the whole thing come about? And I would love to hear how that started.
Okay. Well, weirdly, it started off, I mean, obviously, to a whole generation, Moz is Johnny Vegas, but it started off as a character that I played in stand-up, really. I used to compare stand-up clubs as a character called Moz, who was basically like Moz is. He was a weed dealer and a bit of a scally and a layabout. And I initially shot I did a series for Radio 4, which was my first Radio 4 series called Stereo Nation. And that was about music obsessives, really. And each episode I played a different character. And the second episode was about Moz, basically. But originally he was a bit more of a bedroom DJ. That was his, as well as dealing, he was a bedroom DJ. So that was on Radio 4. And then the series got a good response, but what it didn't get was a second series. So I just started to look at what I could do to develop those ideas, and Moz seemed like the best character to do to try and take to TV. So I actually did a pilot myself in which I played Moz, and Joanna Neary, who plays Judith in Ideal, the woman who's always saying sorry, she was in the pilot as well, although she was playing Jenny the childminder in the pilot, which is quite good. So we did that. We showed it to the BBC, and they liked it, but they were a bit nervous about the fact it was about a weed dealer, and said if we can get a sort of bigger name attached to this, then it'd probably be easier to sort of sell it to the execs. So Henry Normal, who was the producer with Baby Cow, who I developed it with, he said, "What about Johnny Vegas?" And as soon as I looked at the scripts with Johnny Vegas' voice in my head, I thought, this will definitely work. So I met Johnny and we had a chat, and he loved the scripts. And so, then they commissioned the first series. I honestly didn't think we'd get beyond series 1, let alone do 7. So yeah, I mean, it was a dream come true. It's an overused phrase, but it really was. It really was.
It's just, I mean, I suppose I've never even really thought about that now. It's really the idea of having a hash dealer that's not like a bad guy. It's really unusual for mainstream to allow. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Because I always found out, as a young stoner myself, I always found that the realism was. It was bang on, it's kind of, there was a lot of characters that we can all relate to involved in it. But, normally if there is going to be a drug dealer involved, it's usually a violent drug dealer, and it's just sort of quite weird to portray it. So do you think it's maybe the fact that Johnny Vegas, because they just thought, well, you can't, he's an inoffensive comedian, like he's quite likeable. Is that why?
I think that helped. I definitely think that helped, and I think it probably won over sections of the audience that would otherwise gone, hang on, a weed dealer, So yeah, I think the thing about Johnny is he's really lovable and he's really genuine, and that comes across whatever he's doing. I think so. Yeah, I think that really helped. But you're right. I mean, I'm very conscious of because what I thought is like, do you know what, you see like coke dealers and arms dealers on TV and in film a lot, but that's not something. I mean, coke's a bit more sort of widespread now, but 10, 15 years ago that wasn't affecting everybody's lives in the same way. And I just thought, weed dealers, so many people have scored a bit of weed, sold a bit of weed, grown a bit of weed. I just thought that's something that affects thousands of people's lives, and you just don't see it. And one thing I thought was, I don't want a moral message here. I don't want something that, he deals weed and therefore something bad's going to happen. He's going to get his comeuppance. And similarly with the character I played with Brian, like very, very promiscuous homosexual who's like dumping guys, getting another one, dumping guys. I didn't want him to get his comeuppance either. I just thought, I've got mates who are queer and lead that hedonistic lifestyle. And it's not for me, but they seem to have a great time. So why not just show that, So yeah, that was. I sort of thought I wanted to upend some of the things that we expect when we see these sort of characters, these sort of situations on TV. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Because I suppose it's like it's not in any way glamorizing it or making a judgment on it. It's neither. It's just basically these are things that happen in the real world. These are real people that do real things.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think once we got to the second series, it just sort of opened out for me then. I sort of thought there was things I've been wanting to do in a TV show that I hadn't been able to do in previous shows. And I just thought, well, this is, once you can go into the world of dreams and hallucinations and so on, you can do so much. And I really wanted to show a really intense mushroom trip on TV, that wasn't sort of, like you say, glamorizing it or doing that sort of, look at these sort of, snap effects. I wanted to do something that felt like you were under the skin of the trip, you know what I mean? So, yeah, there was several things that I managed to do. And I have to say, hats off to BBC Three, because once they said yes at the beginning, and then once they said yes at the beginning of each time we were doing another season, just hardly any interference. I have to say that people always assume there's somebody looking over your shoulder, going, not that. But they were just gold. I have to say, it was, I had so much freedom on that. It was a real pleasure.
The thing, yesterday, I did a shift as an extra, a 12-hour shift as an extra, and I got put into a scene. Like, I've done it twice before ever, and I've always been like, as part of a crowd scene almost, you know what I mean? So it was like, I'm at the back, I don't know what I have to do, but yesterday I was flung in to a scene where there was an important thing happening. And I've always had so much respect for actors in general, but, when I've done a limited amount of acting, sort of doing comedy skits, like, music videos and stuff like that, but just when it's all set up, where there's a big, massive crew, the clock's ticking, it's costing a lot of money by the minute. Yeah. And, all I had to do was react to a thing. I didn't have a speaking part, but I was right in the middle of an amazing dramatic scene. And yeah, man, I suppose maybe comparing it to from the music scene world, I suppose it's like you're not going to get into that bit overnight. You're going to have to work really hard to prove yourself before you get flung into that bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the route that a lot of comedy writers take is they'll do sketches, for other people's shows. And I never did that. I think because my mind doesn't tend to work in terms of sketch, or that's not the way ideas present themselves to me as sketches. So I never did that route. So I suppose I did bits and pieces for Loose Ends on Radio 4. But again, it wasn't sketches, it's sort of monologues. So I sort of paid my dues in some ways, and like I said, I did this Radio 4 series called Stereo Nation, and then the first TV series I did was called Dr. Terrible's House of Horrible, which I co-wrote with Steve Coogan and Henry Normal. I came up with the idea and presented it to them, but then we all wrote it together, and that was the deep end, because that was there was a lot of money involved in that. We shot it at Shepperton, and they built 2 different forests. Which was quite, because it was foot and mouth outbreak at the time. So the stuff that we were intending to shoot outside, we had to shoot inside. So yeah, and I remember just wandering around one of these back lots, and you go into the studio, and there's a real full-sized forest inside this hangar, and you think, shit, that's got irony. They walk through a forest, which is like 5 or 6 words on a piece of paper. Then some buggers spent 5 or 6 days building a forest. So that was, and you just, like you say, as you said earlier, when you're there, the clock's ticking, you feel like you might as well be standing there with like a bunch of fibers in your hand and set them alight, because it always happens, no matter how prepared you are, how organised. And I am pretty organised personally, but I'll always have my script ready before we start shooting, whereas some writers don't, which is, everybody's got their own method. But I'm always prepared. And then no matter what you're working on, you get to the end of the first day shooting, and one of the assistant directors will say, we're behind schedule. So it's like as soon as you start, you're behind schedule, and it's such a campaign to do it. And when you're there and you're shooting a scene and you get the giggles, it's funny for a little while. And you can tell everybody is thinking, oh, just get it together. Come on, this is costing a fortune, Yeah.
Well, I feel that as well. There was just a small part of me that was just like, oh no, what if I laugh? It's and it's like, I suppose I've not really felt that since maybe school. It's that kind of way, because it's like there's after school, or maybe college, maybe stuff like that. But in general, as an artist, you can laugh when you want. It's fine. No one's going to pull you up for it. But when there's an actual serious scene happening, you're not allowed to laugh. So all of a sudden, that becomes sort of, sounds quite good to have a wee laugh. And I suppose the mixture of, I don't know if it's a director's job but I suppose the balance as well, when there's all this money involved, is trying to balance your perfectionism of trying to get it just right, and also just going, oh, that'll do, but maybe it won't do. So I mean, how do you know it's the right take? Is there sometimes do you just take a punt on a take, or do you just wait until you're happy with it?
Well, that's a difficult question, because usually, if you've got the right team around you, if you've made the right, or you and the producer have made the right selection in terms of the director you're working with, then you trust their judgment, because that's sort of what you're employing a director for their judgment and their eye, and their skills in sort of making something manifest. So you do that. Sometimes when I'm watching a scene that I'm not in, then I might, somebody might say, oh, that's the one, and I might say, oh, there's a little nuance or whatever that we could have another go at here. But if you've got a good director, and I've been really fortunate to work with some really strong directors who really know their stuff, and have been making television for far longer than I have, quite a lot of them. So you just think, these people know what they're doing, So that's it. Is you make the right decision before you start filming. It makes later decisions easier, for sure.
Yeah, I suppose experts will know certain things that like maybe even if it doesn't look bang on, there's also things that can be done with editing. So
yeah,
if you've got a couple of cameras on the go, maybe if something wasn't bang on, that the other camera's caught it perfect, or doesn't have it. I just want to ask you, I'm a massive fan, obviously, of Steve Coogan as well, man. How did you start working with Steve? Did you have a friendship beforehand, or how did that come about?
Basically, the program I mentioned earlier, Dr. Terrible's House of Horrible, I just sent that pitch in to his production company, Baby Cow, and I think it was essentially like a 1.5-page pitch, you know. And I went in for a meeting with Steve and Henry Normal, who co-ran the company with him at the time. And it was an amazing meeting. And Steve, during the meeting, said, I want to make this. I want to be in this. And at the time, they hadn't made any programs with Steve in. It was, they were like, I think they'd done a series with Julia Davis and Rob Brydon. They'd done other things of Rod. They were working on some of the sketch show. And Steve wasn't in any of these things. So I wasn't sure to go, I wasn't going along thinking, right, this is a vehicle for Steve. But it turned out Steve was quite a horror film fan, or certainly a 70s horror film. And he said he wanted to do it. And so, like, within the meeting, it changed from being a, would your company like to make this, to him basically saying, I want to be in this. And of course, as soon as Steve got behind it, you know, the BBC were interested to hear about it, you know. So, no, it was just purely, you know, sending in a pitch, which sometimes happens, you know. And the weird thing I found with, because I never, wanky thing to say, but I'm never short of ideas. I'm short of time to write the ideas. I'm never short of coming up with ideas. But at the time that Dr. Terrible's got commissioned, that was one of 3 things I sort of had in development. And I could never have guessed that would be the one that would get picked up, you know. So you just have to, I always say to, you know, people who are aspiring writers, I say, you've got to love the process more than the project. You've got to have lots of things on the go. You've got to love them all. Under the, you know, with the knowledge that maybe one of them will get made, you know. So I like, yeah, it was one of the few ideas I had at the time, and it got picked up. And then, yeah, we worked together on a few things. And then he did a guest. He was the guest villain in. Did a radio series with Mark Gatiss called Nebulous, and he was the guest villain in that.
I was listening to that all week because when I announced that you were going to be on the show, my friend Mark commented. Shouts to Mark if he's watching. He says he was a massive fan of it, and I hadn't heard it before, so I've been listening to it all week. Yesterday, in between my takes, I had it on my earphones, man. I was really enjoying it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, that was another. You know, I mean, I've been so fortunate. I know. I know. There'll be plenty of people that think I'm stuck to Jammy Bugger and Fair Dues, you know, because I've been so fortunate to be able to make so many of the programs that I wanted to make, you know, rather than sort of skivvying on other people's stuff. So yeah, Nebulous, which was sort of. It was a sort of love letter to 1970s Doctor, sort of John Pertwee, Doctor Who, I suppose, and Quatermass, which I was a big fan of. So, yeah, it was a sort of homage, pastiche of that, really. And we got, you know, again, you know, we got some great guests like David Tennant, Julia Davis, David Warner. You know, we got some brilliant guest villains on it. So, yeah, and you know, like all writers, you love it when an actor can really bring something to life, and I've been so fortunate with so many of the actors I've worked with. You know, I'm sounding like lovely now, aren't I? Sorry.
no, at all. It was because I think something that I've been getting into a lot more in the last couple of years, especially since last June, because last June I started an audio podcast, and since Society collapsed, it switched to kind of this. I've been doing this since March, but right now I've started going back into developing season 2. And basically, the format was maybe a bit of me talking, then there'd be some skits, and then there would be like a special guest interview. So the first 20 minutes, half an hour was just having fun with, you know, comedy ideas or whatever. Or rants or whatever, and then it would be like a special guest that would, you know, a chat with someone for an hour or two. And what I've just loved about the whole concept has just been, you know, learning how to edit and just adding music and the fact that basically you don't need a budget to do this. You just need a well-placed sound effect, and you can transport your listener to anywhere you like. So obviously I'm quite new to it myself, so I'm still getting into it, but it's just amazing because you don't need these you don't need a £6,000 forest being built. You can just have sounds of the forest audio and you're sorted.
Yeah, I know, and that's one of the very exciting things I think about that radio or audio comedy, audio drama, is something set on a weird alien planet is no more difficult to do than something set in the butchers. You know, and that's great things about, you know, because if you go to TV and say it's set in the butchers, you stand far more chance of getting made than say if it's set on an alien planet. But if it's audio, it doesn't matter. And it's a great time because the power of the gatekeepers has diminished a little bit, because you can literally seize the means of production and get stuff out there and find an audience. You know, there's podcasts that would have probably still been, you know, been in development for 5 years if it was a TV program, but it's a podcast and it's been on the air for 5 years and it's got an audience, you know. So it's a really interesting time. And that doesn't mean that it's not still important to, you know, to feed the traditional roots of television and radio and cinema and so on. But I just think there's this other stuff that's opened up, and that's great.
Yeah, because if someone was to make a very funny podcast and it got popular, then it's going to be a lot easier meeting. Should that person be wanting to speak to someone of a TV company?
Yeah,
because you're like, well, I've already proved that this works. There is already an audience for it, and we'd like to make a visual version of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you know, because one of the problems that you encounter, and I've certainly encountered, and I think probably most writers and producers tell you the same thing, is you're being told if something is funny enough or not funny enough by people that they've never done a stand-up gig, they've never, you know, they've never judged an audience in that way. You know, a lot of them have never actually made programs either. You know, you meet people and they've got a series of discrete lunches. They've ended up in a position where they can tell other people whether or not their programs can be made, and so they're making the decision on behalf of an audience that they're imagining in their head, and that audience is largely made up of people like them, you know, and their main thing is, you know, when I want to sound too cynical, a lot of TV producers' main thing is, if I commission something and it turns out to not be a success, that's not going to look very good for me. So that builds in an increasing amount of caution. And so they're imagining an audience that is quite cautious as well. And the thing, like you say, you can do a podcast or whatever, and it can have however many thousand viewers, listeners, you know, and so you can't say, oh, that's a bit niche or that's a bit, because it's been proved. And I think that's a really positive thing. It can't be anything other than a positive thing that, you know, audiences are have a stronger say in what you know, what gets created, you know, and we've seen this in the last 10 years in the way that you know, in America, if a program's not doing so well, you get fans who are lobbying for it to have a better time slot. You know, that's really savvy. You know, and the sort of campaigns that jump up around, you know, things being cancelled and so on. So I think the audience have got a stronger sense of their own power than ever before.
Absolutely, and you know, with the rise of Twitter and everything like that as well, it's great to see. With going back to the sort of Steve Coogan thing quickly, I mean, so Alan Partridge appeared in an episode of Alan Partridge, but you're also involved in the Alpha Papa movie as well. Could you just talk a wee bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I came in as a sort of script editor on that, and it had been in development for a long time. I think 8 years or something. And the script had gone through several different drafts. The original draft, Peter Bain and Armando Iannucci had done, and then I think they did another draft, and some other people got involved, and then it was on the shelf for a while. And then Steve started writing with the Gibbons brothers, who I think really helped sort of, you know, regenerate his passion for Partridge, because they write Partridge so well. You know? Two really lovely blokes as well. But I think they got me in because the script was still something of a sort of Frankenstein's monster. You know, there was still bits from previous drafts, this new stuff, and I think they wanted like an outside eye that could just sort of, you know, look at how it was all fitting together. So yeah, it was a really that was a really interesting project, and you know, like I said, I've worked with Steve quite a lot, but that was really intense, and that was that you'd spend the whole day filming, and then you'd spend till 1 o'clock in the morning rewriting the next day's scenes. You know, and I've got to say, sometimes I do wonder, because I'd look at what we'd got when we'd done the rewriting. Yeah, this is really funny. And then you'd look at what we had originally planned to shoot the next day and think, yeah, that's really funny as well. But I think Steve's got a sort of passion for immediacy, I suppose, for things like that are very fresh and very vital and very believable. And so I think something that has only just been created, he's got a greater fascination for. So yeah, it was an interesting project. Well, I have never been colder in my life. We shot some of it on on Chroma Pier, and I remember I had 2 pairs of jeans on and a pair of leggings and an overcoat, and I was frozen. It was so cold. It was in February. But yeah, no, it was that's the first project I worked on as well, where somebody used a drone. And I remember, 'cause drone shooting now is on everything, isn't it? And we were talking to the DOP, and he was saying, "Oh, this is going to revolutionise shooting." He said because before this, we would have had to hire a helicopter, and he said, just with a pilot, you're looking at about £1,000 an hour, and then the fuel and all that. So you wanted an aerial shot then, before sort of 6-7 years ago. That'd be a massive chunk of your budget, and now drones about $1,500 or something, and that's it, and you've got it forever. And so they did a drone shot in that, and I remember thinking, wow, that's going to change things. And sure enough, there's drone shots in absolutely everything now. Lots of times when they're not needed at all either.
Yeah, but it's if you splashed out on a drone camera, you might as well.
You've got to use it.
Yeah, you might. At the intro to everything you do. Maybe maybe. Well, I think if I was to buy a drone camera, I'd maybe just start my show every day with a drone, just sort of flying about the room. Maybe open the door, open a window, let it out. Yeah, but yeah, man. But I really enjoyed Alpha Papa because I was wondering, how do you take something like Alan Partridge and turn it into a film? But it was absolutely everything I wanted to see. And I think that, am I right in saying, I think Alan Partridge had been away for a while before the film as well?
Yeah, so I think 6 or 7 years, something like that. Yeah. So I think that's why Steve was very keen, that we were constantly reworking it, and that I think that's why I was brought in, like I say, to make sure it all functioned. Because it was a little bit of a gamble, because obviously you could have done an Alan Partridge film at any point. You could have done one in the 90s when it was first sort of this big success. So I think there was that sense that this has to be brilliant. If it's anything other than brilliant, then people are going to go, it's past its sell-by date, isn't it? And I think it really proved that it wasn't. And one of the things I love about that film is the opening titles, where it's him driving along in the car, singing along to the radio and shouting to other drivers. And it's just one of the, I've just not seen that film before. And it's so simple and so funny. And I think that just sets the tone for the whole film. You just think, this is going to be good. And funnily enough, when he was first, when I first got involved, they hadn't settled on the title. And the title got settled on, I think, probably about halfway through shooting. So it was just the Alan Partridge project was what it said, I think. Very like the Alan Parsons project. But I remember Steve saying early on that one of the ideas for the title, and he was quite keen on this, and I think Henry had to talk him out of it. He wanted to call it Alan Partridge in Live and Let Die. Nobody else could quite understand why he wanted to do that, but I remember quite clearly that was one of his ideas. I don't know if it's like postmodernism or just daftism. I'm not sure.
Well, I think it's just. I think it goes without saying that Alan Partridge is probably. I can't think of a better comedy character that's been created. That's, it's one of. I suppose the best thing about a good character is that when you put them into a situation, you kind of know how they're going to react to that, because and obviously since the film, the Alan Partridge franchise, or for lack of a better word, it just seems to be loads of new Partridge stuff is just popping up. I've just been listening to the from the Oates House, yeah, and once again, I suppose that's what we're kind of talking about earlier on, the freedom to do that with just audio. And I would imagine that that's quite easy to put together and a lot of fun to put together as well.
I would imagine. I'm not involved in that at all, so I would imagine. And I think it's yet another example of somebody in lockdown thinking, what's the direct route to using my creativity? And I think obviously a podcast is the one. So yeah, I listened to the first one a couple of weeks ago. It's hilarious. Yeah. It is the character that just keeps on giving. It's so funny. And in a way, it's the classic. It's Captain Mannering or whoever. It's that thing of somebody who views themselves in a way that's very different to how the rest of the world views them. And on property and and I love the thing where Alan does, where he thinks he's coming across as really cool, and it's transparently naff. I think that's one of the best. Like, probably just trying to be sort of casual and sort of I love that.
And it's exactly what the character Alan Partridge would do. Is like many of us, start a podcast during lockdown. He would do it, and you know, he would, you know, as a gift to the world almost.
Yes, yeah. I think he's got a strong sense of generosity about it. So, and the books are great. I don't know if you've read the Alan Partridge books.
Yeah, I'll listen to the audiobook version. So I think that's just Steve reading it out word for word.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's hilarious, man. It's you've got to watch. You're not on public transport when you're listening to that, or you'll look a little bit foolish by just laughing out loud.
Yeah.
I was just also wanting to ask about the Harry Potter thing. How did that come about? I mean, I've not watched Harry Potter, but I have heard of it. So obviously it's a bit of a big deal. So what happened there?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Mark. I've only watched the ones that I'm in. It's just an acting gig. I mean, it's one of those things where I went. My acting agent said, you know, go for this audition, and it was probably one of the most inauspicious auditions I've ever had. And you know, because I'm 6'2", I'm a chunky bald bloke. I only get offered a certain sort of character, which is baddies essentially. Which is why in my own stuff, if I write apart from myself and my own stuff, which I don't always do, but I usually do, I always make sure it's something different. I make sure it's like, you know, a more friendly character, because I have played, you know, I was a Death Eater in Harry Potter, but I played Nazis, pirates, murderers, convicted paedophiles, you know, henchmen, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so it was just, I went along for this audition, but they didn't have a script. So they said, "Oh, you'd be playing this character, but we don't have a script. So could you just tell us tell us about some other, you know, creepy or menacing characters you played?" So I talked about playing the character of Fist in Ideal, who's obviously very, you know, quite creepy. And I kid you not, the woman started filming it, you know, on a camera. She said, so, and then while I'm talking, she was just texting or playing Tetris or something. I'm not sure what. She was just on the phone, the casting director. And I was thinking, yeah, this is a waste of time. I've come up from Brighton for this, you know. And then I didn't hear anything. And that's the weird, you know, it's like a lot of jobs, you know, if it goes well, then, you know, you get the nod. If it doesn't go well, you never hear from them again. And it's like a blind date that sort of disappointed everybody. And we just pretended it didn't happen, you know. So I didn't hear them from about a month. So I just thought, gone, you know, because most casts you don't get, you know, and so I just was getting on with whatever I was doing, and then I got a call saying, "Oh, they want you to do it," and I said, "Right, so is there a script? You know, do I know what the character is called?" And they said, "Yeah, the character is called Squat Man," and I thought, "Well, I'm 6'2". I'm not squat, you know. And I thought, I reckon they cast somebody else and they couldn't do it. And then they've got to film in a week's time. So, you know, I'm not bigging myself up here at all. But it was literally, I think they start in 2 weeks' time. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's something I think people talk about quite a bit, but you could easily watch those films and miss me. You know, I think I've got one line in each film. And weirdly, the first, because I'm in the last two, the Deathly Hallows. Weirdly, the first one, I mean, I think it's the second scene, and I'm quite clearly there. You know, if you know to look out for me, I'm quite clearly there. And that took a week. And then the second film, I went loads of scenes, but in the background, and that took 3 months. And in the second one, you could absolutely miss me. But it was an interesting experience, and just the budget, man. Just being, you know, when you're used to working in television, where you know, you sort of everything's a trade-off. You can afford this, but you can't afford that. You know, if we have this actor, then we'll have shit catering. You know, all this sort of all these sort of balancing act that you do, and then being involved in that, you know, where money was no object. It really wasn't. You know, and
how was it? How was the catering?
It was divine, Mark. I've seldom eaten better. Yeah. No, the catering didn't suffer just because they had Helen Bonham Carter in it. No, it was good. But I got to say, and it was slightly nerve-wracking. This was the first day shooting, and I'm sitting at this table, and there's Helena Bonham Carter, there's Jason Isaacs, there's Ray Fiennes. I was sitting next to Peter Mullen, the director, Scott's director. You know, he was so relaxed, and it's like, you know, and I'm there thinking, right, you got your one line coming up. You don't want to look like an idiot in front of Helena Bonham Carter, you know. And the whole time, Peter is really friendly, a really lovely guy, and you know, And I got to say, the word fuck is in pretty much every sentence that he says. And so, you know, they'd be getting everything ready, and people going, hey, so we fucking need with that fuck, no, the D, yeah. And then they got action, and they go, right, fuck, straight in there. And like, Pete was so relaxed the whole time, just chat. Whereas I'm thinking, right, I got to focus. And I did pretty much get through it without fucking up my line, thankfully. But yeah, and when we also had to react to, it was like, there's this huge snake called Nagini that comes down the table and then swallows this teacher. And of course, it wasn't a huge snake; it was just a tennis ball on the end of a stick. And you just got to react to this tennis ball as if as if it's this monstrous being. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. And during the second film, I spent most of the time just in the trailer writing Ideal 6, because they were just waiting for the wedding. It was an outside big battle scene. And I'd be there from like 6:30 in the morning, and then I'd just be writing. And then, about 3 in the afternoon, they'd say, "All right, everybody out." So you go out into the location there, mill around for about 40 minutes, and the director of photography holds the lens up to the clouds and goes, "No." And then you all go back in, and that was the day, So yeah, just weeks went by and we didn't really shoot anything, which is what film's like. You just can't afford that in television. If you turn up, you shoot, because if you don't, you're fucked. And it was a real insight into another kind of filming.
I think that the one line is more nerve-wracking, because you've only got one line, so the pressure builds up. And because if you can't get one line right, then people will think you're rubbish. But it's like when I sort of in a complete similar in a way, in a sense, is if you go, if I do spoken word sort of comedy sets where I've maybe got 20 minutes to sort of bring my personality across and come out with stuff, some pre-written, some making it off the top of my head. But then I did you do a slam poetry competition where you've got to go up and just do one poem. And you're just like, wow, because you're not allowed to introduce the poem, you're not allowed to give context and explain it, which, half of my set's explaining what I'm about to do. And then, the thing I do is usually, lasts about 4 seconds. Yeah. So I can totally relate to that. I've got Petra Jolly's comment saying a name drop. Yeah, I think we've got this thing where we do a name drop when there's a name drop. And I think that might be a name drop.
The name drop.
You call that radio?
We've had substantial name drops, but there we go. That's the name drop. Can you beat that? Is there any other name drops you can do? You've created stuff with Steve Coogan. That to me is the coolest thing anyway. So you've worked with Johnny Vegas and people like that as well. But is there any other name drop you can do for this part of the show?
The weird thing is, I've obviously worked with some quite big comedy names and actors and so on, and that's a real privilege. But for me, sometimes it's not necessarily the things that thrill me aren't necessarily the big names. I worked for a long time with an actor who's sadly passed away 10 years ago. I think 10 years ago today, was Graham Crowden, and I'd loved him in If and Britannia Hospital and Oh Lucky Man and several other TV things. And so to work with him was like such a buzz, and he became a mate, So that something like that's really, that means more to me in a way than working with some of the more, names that perhaps have a bit more cachet. I suppose one of the things I'm really proud of, and this will count as a name drop, is working with Mark Eastman, because he was somebody that I'd sort of been going to see the Fall since I was 14. I went to see the Falls in 1978 and I was 14. And I'd seen them so much over the years. And then he came into Ideal and did the guest spot playing Jesus in a hallucination sequence. And he was well outside his comfort zone, and it was like, I really appreciated him doing it because, he's not an actor, and it's a stupid thing to say, but acting is really difficult if you're not, if you've never done it before. He put himself well outside his comfort zone, and he really delivered. And then we sort of became mates and started writing together. And we wrote a horror film feature script together, which wasn't made because everybody said it was too weird. But actually publishing it next year. It's called The Otherwise, so that's coming out in May next year.
I see that here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So that's the script, and also there's about 50, 60 pages of the two of us in conversation about favourite films, music and so on. There's an essay by Ellen, his widow, and I wrote a couple of essays myself. So, yeah, Marky Smith, that'll do as a name drop, won't it?
That's perfect. That is absolutely
The
perfect.
name drop.
You call that radio?
What's interesting as well, that Marky Smith's been name dropped, I think, about maybe 3 times on this show. It feels he seems to have obviously, I suppose he played so many gigs over the years, and we speak to so many musicians and stuff that you know you don't forget Marky Smith when you met him. I never met him myself, but just so many stories of his escapades, and I really enjoyed the biography that he okayed as well before. I can't remember what it was called.
Renegade.
The Renegade, yeah. I loved reading that. And I'm really looking forward to reading that one. So that one's your one, so that's in May 2021.
Yeah, so next year. So which is scary in about 7 or 8 months away, isn't it? But yes, so May next year. It's called The Otherwise. So yeah, I mean, it'll never be made now because Mark and the Fall are characters. They're not the main characters, but they're characters within the narrative. So it can sort of only be a script now. But it was an amazing experience, because I thought when we started working on it, I thought we'd just do brainstorming, and then I'd go away and make sense of it. But Mark wrote several scenes on his own, and we wrote several scenes together, and we sort of hammered out the storyline and stuff. So it was a proper collaboration. So yeah, because he'd been talking about doing films. He'd written one other film script about 4 or 5 years earlier, which hadn't got made either. And I thought, maybe he'll lost interest in this, because I think he really enjoyed the immediacy of you've got some new songs, you get in the studio, you record them, done, do the next thing. It definitely had that do your job and go attitude, and so I thought, maybe he won't sustain this. But we worked on it over quite a long period and really honed it. And I got to say, maybe if I'd been a bassist or something, I would have ended up with a thick ear. But he was always really sort of generous and kind and courteous. Mark had a real courtesy to him that I think would surprise a lot of people who just think he was some sort of freewheeling sort of drunkard or whatever. I mean, he had that thing. I remember going backstage when the Fall played in Brighton. This is probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, and I went back to see him and I put my head in the door. I said, "Is it all right if I come in?" He goes, "Yeah, come in." So I went in, and he was just lounging on the sofa. And then my wife at the time came in behind me, and as soon as she came in, he stood up and sort of shook his head, like, as you'd stand up when a woman comes in the room. It was that sort of old style courtesy, and I thought, blimey, that's not what people would expect,
It's, there's a wee clip here.
I didn't mean to doubt you.
You were certainly right about that Moz bloke. Drugs, pornography, black magic. He's taking the fucking piss.
Do you really think you should use those words?
I can use any word I want, actually, pal, all right.
Sorry, Jesus. You were saying?
You know what's got to be done, don't you?
Something drastic.
Yeah. He has to die, Alan. Moz has to die.
Moz has to die?
Yeah, just said that.
Sorry, Jesus.
It's okay.
You call that radio. More like a TV show. On almost every night. It's gonna be streaming live. You call that radio?
Call that radio.
What about the people who hated on me?
Right, and then I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in a minute.
That's mad, isn't it?
What's a Netflix thing?
It's actually a podcast. It's,
What the fuck's a podcast?
you know, it's kind of like a radio show.
Oh, that radio.
Yeah.
And is there a way we can do something like that?
I couldn't help it.
By injection inside or
Yeah, I think so because I think just paint in general because I think like my poem is in my painting.
No. Cut. I should call that radio. A classic clip of Marquis Smith. I'm going to go to the comments. If anyone's got a wee comment they want to make. Hardcore full fans think Mark was Jesus anyway.
Yep.
And was that your first experience? Did you of contacting Mark? Was it? Did you try and write him in, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I was writing the part. I was writing the part of Jesus. I came up with the idea for the scene, and I just thought I didn't want him to look like Jesus. I wanted him to look like some bloke that just be sitting in a pub somewhere talking. And I thought, ooh, some bloke sitting in a pub. We'd met a few times over the years, but very, very briefly. I used to. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I used to work for Factory Records. They had a video department called Icon. So the four was sort of tangentially involved with Factory, although they never released any records with Factory. So I met him a couple of times then, and also just backstage or after full gigs. And the very first full gig I went to, I sort of tapped him on the shoulder just as I was leaving, because it was in such a small venue. There wasn't even a stage. They were just playing it. It was called Kelly's. There was a little bar in Manchester. It was a Rock Against Racism gig, and they were just playing at the end of the bar, basically. And they finished, and there wasn't anywhere to go off to, so they finished playing, and then they just stood around chatting next to the instruments. And I had to go and get the coach back to where I lived. I just tapped him on the shoulder and I said, "That was great." He went, "Oh, cheers, cock." And that was it. And that was the first time, and I was 14. That was the first time I spoke to him. And a lot of our conversations over the years were of that variety, really. Was, "Oh, thanks, that was great." "No, cheers, Carl." So that was the first time we met, was properly, was doing the show, yeah.
Brilliant stuff, man. And Joe McKenzie says, hello, Graham, Mark, good chat. Thanks for tuning in, Joe.
I love Joe. He's a good mate.
Shouts to Joe. Paul says, really enjoyed the ideal everyday life with a heavy garnish of surrealism. Brilliant.
Oh, cheers.
Alan says, Alpha Papa is a brilliant film.
I'm really glad I agreed to do this now, because it's basically just people going, "Thanks for doing that." That's really...
No, absolutely, man.
Start the week, Mark. Thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you, mate. You've done everything. Everything that I've seen that you've done has been amazing, man. And so I really appreciate you coming on. We've also got another. Greasy says, Ideal was one of the best series 3 years ago. Wish they still made TV like that. Then I might pay the license fee. Steady on, Greasy. Steady on. And Petra, yes, you have missed the Coogan chat. Petra's actually met Steve before. That was her name drop. That was when she was on the show before. She knew Steve. Might have even had a kiss with Steve. We don't know. But I was just talking about the music thing. So it's interesting that you work with for Factory Records and stuff, because also how I first got in contact with you is you very kindly played my band Gyro Baby's song on your show, and then since then I've been really enjoying listening to your show, and it's just quite rare to hear somebody that really obviously has a passion for music going digging and finding sort of new stuff. So it's been great. You've introduced me to some great acts, and
cool.
you know. So how did that radio show come about? Have you always kind of did that, or?
I've sort of done it on and off. So in the 90s, I did a show, more or less the same show, really, on local radio in Brighton. There's a station that was called Surf at the time. So I was on a show called Totally Wired, which was on 7 nights a week, and I think initially I just did one night, and then after a while I did a few. And it was a similar sort of thing, new releases, all different kinds of genres, a couple of things from back in the day, a bit of soundtrack, anything that I thought was good, really. I do have an insatiable appetite for music, and I am fascinated, and I've never really tried to deconstruct it. I don't know why, but I'm always fascinated by what's happening there. What's happening now, what's about to happen. And that doesn't mean that I've got this weird thing that I don't know how common this is, but if I like something, I tend to never stop liking it. So music that I liked when I was, 10, 11, 12, I still love now. Sometimes you speak to people and they go, oh, I can't believe the shit I used to listen to in the 80s or whatever. And I think, really? I still love the things I listened to in the 80s. So yeah, I've always sort of had that fascination. And because I'm a writer who, I write most days I'll write between 4 and 6 hours, I suppose. And I tend to listen to music most of the time I'm writing. And sometimes I'm using music to sort of inspire me. And, like I chose all the soundtrack music for Ideal and for quite a few other things I've done. And I think, I'm not saying I'm the best at doing that, but I know I've got a good ear and I've got a very broad taste as well. There's certain things I don't listen to much country and western, I'll be honest with you. There's other, I don't listen to a huge amount of death metal, maybe a tiny bit. But so I've got an interest across the board. So I'm not, I know a lot of music obsessives who are obsessive as I am, but are a little bit more specialized. Maybe it's all dance music or maybe it's all post-punk or whatever. So yeah, I've just always had that. And I hadn't really done a music show for probably about 15, 20 years, actually. And then I've been talking with my friend Daniel, who runs Totally Radio, which is based in Brighton, but it's online all over the world, obviously. And he was saying, oh, you should do a show. And I kept saying, yeah, no, I should, I will, And I've been thinking about it, but I've been so busy with other stuff. And then when Mark Smith died in January 2018, he said, oh, do you want to do a show about Mark? And I said, yeah, definitely. So that was the first one I did, it was recorded about, I think, 3 days after Mark died. So I was in a bit of a state. But I think it came across okay. And it's just, a few anecdotes about Mark and just playing the sort of fall from the 70s through till when when he passed away. And then once I'd done that, I just thought, yeah, I love doing this. So then I started doing mixtape, and originally it was once a fortnight, and it was 75 minutes long. She's ridiculous. I just had this thing. I thought, nobody ever does a 75-minute long show. That's what I'll do. And then after a while, I was like, oh, fuck it, I'm going to do 90 minutes. So now it's on once a week, and it's 90 minutes, and I love doing it. And one of the things I love about it is it's a chance to just sit in a room. And I can't do anything else. I've just got to listen to music that I love through a set of speakers and occasionally mention what that was you just heard. Because I've always got so many projects on the go. My mind is always partly thinking about that. Whereas when I spend that 90 minutes doing the show, that's all that's in my head, and I just listen to the music. And it's a really good thing to do. Yeah.
It's also, I've just put a link in the comments, guys, if anyone's wanting to subscribe or listen to it. But it's just, I think that viewers of the show will really like his taste in music, and just like you said, a very broad, so it's really interesting, lots of new stuff. So check out there. But I think also the good thing about, I keep on meaning to do it myself, and maybe we've got patrons who subscribe every month as well, so I was maybe going to just make like a monthly sort of mixtape idea as well. And I think one of the things that I'd really like to do about it is because, see, when it comes to the end of the year and you're thinking about your favourite music of the year, you kind of go blank a bit, or if you always forget about things. So it might be quite nice to just do something on a weekly or a monthly basis, just to recognise music that you do enjoy, so that you can look back on it. I mean, I know Paul Heaton, who was played us in Six Music many years ago, and that was like amazing for us to happen. And I think he's got a thing where he writes down his top 10 or top 20 songs every month, like as a sort of diary. And I think that stretches way back to the 80s, and that's really cool. That's like an encyclopedia of your favourite music. And because sometimes, if you're ever at a house party, pre-COVID, don't phone the police on me, but if you're out at a house party, and, you get the aux in, or you get the controls, and sometimes you're like, right, I can pick anything I want, and you kind of, it's too much to choose from, basically.
Yeah, you get option paralysis, don't you? I mean, it's interesting because I think a lot of digital platforms, I use as scrapbooks, I suppose. Because scrapbooks used to be a thing, when you were a kid in the 70s and 80s. And scrapbooks have sort of gone by the by now, but that's how I use Facebook. I don't put anything personal on Facebook. I just put art and music on that I like. And sometimes it's sort of, I love spreading the word. I definitely proselytize about music and art, that I love. But part of it's a reminder for myself as well, because there's so much. And this is one of the things. There is so much amazing music coming out all the time, and anybody who says that's not true is an idiot, basically, because there is so much good stuff coming out. And it's impossible to keep track of it all. I'm not sound arrogant here, but I don't know many people that listen to as much new music as I do. I'm sort of, I wouldn't say I've got my finger on the pulse, but I'm constantly, because I go searching for it. I'm constantly looking for stuff and introduce people to a lot of stuff. But several times a month, somebody will say to me, "Oh, do you know about something? Have you heard this?" And I was, "No." And you discover something else, and it seems like it doesn't matter how much time you spend looking for new music, you'll never hear all the good stuff. There's always loads of good stuff. And when people say, "Oh, music's shit these days," I just think, no, mate, you've completely missed the point there. It's just, you're judging it by what's on the billboard posters, what's getting the big push, what's, what the PR people are putting out there. Because, from the margins through to the centre, there's always amazing stuff happening. But you've got to make a bit of effort. Why shouldn't you make a bit of effort? Because otherwise you're just saying, "Yeah, feed me whatever, and I think that's bollocks.
Well, I think, Graeme, that's what's so good about your show, is that there is a lack of curators doing this now, and the only, you've got your big radio shows, but there's a lack of people curating music and sort of to show people, and it is difficult because there is just so much music, and a lot of it is terrible. It does take a lot of digging to find it, but I totally agree with what you say, man. I don't think there's ever been as much good music right now. It's just hard to take it all in. I think the reason that people think that there's no good music is, like you said, that there's maybe less good stuff being pushed by the major record labels. I also think that because everybody's more open-minded to differently, everyone's, back in the day when you had to spend £15 on a CD, you would tend to stick to your same genre because you're not going to risk a band. But now people who are into punk are liking a bit of hip hop, and so people are listening to a little bit more. But as a result of this, there is not like a big, there's not like big bands anymore because everybody's just kind of dipping their toe in and out. And I think that might be the issue, because it's not like we are all listening to multiple genres in multiple ways.
Yeah, I think it is a really interesting time, and I think there's one thing that I think is interesting, and this is sort of aside from genre in a way, is that there are people now making music that would have never made it before. And I don't just mean people that aren't musicians or didn't have access to instruments, but for instance, like on the show, on Mixtape, I play quite a lot of trans artists, and that's not because I'm necessarily a standard bearer for trans rights or whatever. I mean, I support trans rights, but I'm not doing that as a favour to the trans community. I'm doing it because I'm finding these artists who are trans, and it can be in electric pop, hip hop, more sort of avant-garde experimental work, who are putting forward their vision in a musical form. And I'm convinced that 5 years ago they wouldn't have done that, because they wouldn't have thought that they would be allowed the platform. They wouldn't think there was an audience for it, or perhaps they didn't have confidence to be themselves as artists. And quite a portion of it is trans artists singing about being trans. A portion of it is trans artists just singing about whatever the fuck they want to sing about. And that's something that wasn't there until relatively recently. And I'm forever finding something, think, well, this is interesting. And then you dig a little bit deeper, they're trans, and I find that's fascinating. But equally, that's not the only one. There's a greater range of ethnic mixed race artists coming forward. There's people who, from little towns that don't have, or villages even, that don't have a scene. So they would have never, they'd never be able to play live because there's no venues over there. But now you can record things in your bedroom, you can get it out there. So I think there's just so much more from so many angles at the moment, and I think it's a really exciting time for music.
Well, I suppose it's the same thing we're talking about with the podcast, the fact that you can skip the gatekeepers and just create for the sake of it. I've got my Tony made you call that radio mug for shouts to Tony for that as well. And yeah, I suppose you've not, and I suppose with technology getting cheaper, then you don't have to have quite as, you still need the middle class privilege in order to promote your music properly with Facebook ads and stuff. But technology, you can actually get quite a decent recording setup in your house. And it's more about teaching yourself the skills and how to record properly and how to produce it properly, rather than having these money barriers as before. So yeah, man, it's absolutely exciting. And also I think that we can all find our tribe or our niche easier online, because there might only be a few people in your village or your city. But when you add it all together around the world, there's a massive appetite, whether that's, something really obscure that you're making. And so it's all good. Paul's saying, I highly recommend that you check out Adrian Auer, a criminally underrated Argentinian producer and DJ.
Right, I'm going to write this down. Otherwise. So what's he called? Adrian Auer. Right, okay.
Adrian Auer. Bill Morrison. Bill Morrison, loving the chat, massive fan of Ideal and massive Fall fan as a teenager. Thanks for tuning in, Bill. And we've got Angela saying, seen the Fall on their last gig as they were awesome. I thought Mark was very brave to perform in a wheelchair. That is one of my biggest regrets that I didn't go there. That was at the Glasgow QMU, I believe. And
that was the very last gig, I think, wasn't it?
The very last gig, man. And I really regret not making it along to that one. Colette says, hi babe, just get time to pay attention to you. Need to reverse you later. I love fresh tunes, love Baby Doll. Thank you, Colette, and thank you to Colette as well for letting us film and some of the music video that we shared earlier on in her area, her big garden. Paul saying, the Fall is a running theme and you call that radio. It is. It happens all the time. Talking about Mark tonight and the youth. We had Martin Youth Glover on the show last week, who says that he's working on a new project with Bricks. So yeah, that is correct. And I think it's because well, my band, maybe especially in the earlier days, we were compared with the Fall all the time, and I don't know whether it was the sound or the fact that we went through lots of band members, but it's one of the reasons that I picked up Renegade, because people kept on saying it, and I can see the resemblance, and it wasn't by design, but I take it as a massive compliment, because the Fall are an incredible band, and just the staying power and the amount of music is just incredible.
Yeah, I've always got respect for people who are prolific in their creative output, because I think Mark had a real work ethic, and I think I'm a huge Fall fan, but I think it's fair to say there's not many Fall albums that are solid gold from beginning to end. There's usually a few sort of moments where it's not quite clicking, or it doesn't feel like the song's been developed enough, or maybe it's been developed too far. But I think the important thing is he just kept doing it. And every Fall album has got some moments on it where you go, fucking hell, that's amazing. And so it's that productivity that, when you get bands who spend like 8 to 9 years working on one album, I think that's going to have to be absolutely stunning to validate almost a decade's worth of work. And I think Mark just had this thing about, this is a word I've used a few times tonight, but immediacy, that thing about just, now is the time to do this, we do this, and we move on. And I think some people think that Mark had a bit of a slapdash attitude sometimes, that he wasn't 100% invested in what he was doing. And I think he was always invested in what he was doing, but what he was more invested in was what he was going to do next. And I think that's part of that thing of just pushing on, that thing, the staying power, like you say. And I think that's one of the great lessons of Mark.
It breaks my heart, man. I've got so many friends or no talented people who just are amazing, and they're making amazing stuff, but they don't release it. They'll play you a track or send you a secret link, and you're like, this is great, you need to get it out. Or when are you going to release it? Or in the next couple of months, and then a couple of years have passed, and they're working on something completely new, and those tracks have never seen the light of day.
Yeah, I've got friends like that. Yeah,
it's frustrating, and I suppose that there is a bit of good advice is just release it, because like you said, okay, maybe there will be a couple of tracks that could have done with a bit more time. But if you're just going to waste loads more time on these certain pieces, then you're just going to get bored of the good tracks, and the whole thing will just go in the bin. And you never know, you might just release that, and like you said, there's moments that are fucking brilliant, and there's going to be people that are going to get that feeling and that beautiful moment. So just release it, and let's just, to wrap it up, man. Just to sort of end it, it's a question that I quite like to ask people is about. I mean, obviously, we haven't even touched on the book that you did in 15 gigs.
Which one?
That there. Oh yeah, get the punt in there. Yeah.
You'll like it. You'll definitely like it.
I love it. I'm going to order one. So briefly, just talk about that book, and then also just for any advice you've got for any writers out there. I think that what we've unearthed on this show as well is lots of people tune in, and they've got ideas, or at different levels. Maybe they've not written before, but they want to write, or maybe they've had drafted some script ideas. I mean, what advice would you give to people to if they are?
I think that the most important thing you can say to any potential writer is write. You know, there's a great quote by the writer William Burroughs, who's one of my favourite writers, and he says, "Writing is for editing is for on the page, not in the head." And a lot of people, they come up with an idea and they think, yeah, something like that, but that's not quite right. Maybe it should be. And I just think, just write, just start writing. And it doesn't matter if what you write is going to get thrown away or going to get edited down to just one sentence, or whatever. Just write, just get, normalize writing within your life. Don't make it this precious thing. Just write as much as you can. And I always say to people, I mean, the majority of my experience is writing scripts, but I've also written essays for art books and music books, and I've written foreground music. I'm doing another one now, which is The Life in 15 Films. So, I do write prose as well, but obviously my main experience is with scripts. And I always say to people, don't be scared of your first draft. Your first draft will contain stuff in it that makes you cringe and makes you think, oh, Jesus, that's not right, and that's not what I meant. But it's just your first draft. Of course, it's going to be, a little bit clunky. Get that done, then go back and go through it again and go through it, until it's what you want it to be. And I think it's very easy, particularly when people are starting out, to have a little bit of a fear of your own words on the page. And, at one point, we'd all be writing freehand, or we'd be doing it on a typewriter or whatever. One of the problems I think about writing on a computer is when words come up there, it looks like it's been typeset, so it looks really official. It looks like it looks as good as anybody else's, or as normal as anybody else's script. So I think that can make you judge it a little bit harshly. And I just think it doesn't matter if it's a bit crap. You don't need to show it to anybody until it's not crap, And I'm forever writing things and thinking, or I'll be sometimes if I'm co-writing with somebody else, and I'll be saying, not this, but this sort of thing, when you're pitching an idea or a line or whatever. And I think that's okay. You can always make it better. You can always polish it up. Just write. And I always think I'd rather write things I'm going to throw away than not write. So just get into doing it and try and make sure it's something you do every day. I think, don't. And try and avoid too much. I can only write in this room when this pencil is pointing at this angle and the cock's crowed this many times. I think just any time you get a chance to write, just write and reread what you've written. I'm obsessed by writing in a way that a lot of writers aren't. A lot of writers would rather do anything other than write, and they do a lot of procrastination, whereas I genuinely love the act of doing it. So I think I'm probably a bit of a rarity in that respect. And I'm talking as well about some very successful writers have that attitude of, oh, I'd rather take the dog for a walk, I'd rather do this or that. Whereas I sort of privilege writing over most of the things, to be honest with you. So I just think, once you get into it, once you go through that barrier of feeling awkward or self-conscious, it's very addictive. It's probably my biggest addiction, actually. So yeah, I'd just go for it. If that doesn't scare you off, I don't know what will. But just just fucking right, man.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's therapeutic as well. Just I think you always feel better once you've you've wrote something as well, on any level. Angela, absolutely get the writing done. Why are we waiting? Wire film convo soon?
Okay, yeah. So the Wire film is called People in a Film. We started shooting it almost 2 years ago. We're going to be shot. I think we're going to be shot. I'm already shot. We're going to be finished by the end of this year. Then we're editing it first 6-7 months of next year. So it should be. I mean, Christ knows what's going to happen in terms of things being shown at cinemas, if cinemas are going to be open or whatever, but it should be making its first screenings at the end of next year, so in just over a year's time. But we did a Kickstarter fund for it, and the response was amazing. I mean, we raised 60 grand within the allotted time that we set ourselves, and then people have continued donating, so we've got another, I think almost another 10 grand since that. So it was just so gratifying, because they're a really important band, and you see some of the documentaries that get made about bands, and you think, why are they having a documentary made about them? And why are obviously, again, over 40 years and massively influential. So it's been, it's been really good. And today I was interviewing Jake Chapman. We've got some brilliant. Thurston Moore has been interviewed. Daniel Miller, head of Mute Records, interviewed Stephen Malinder from Cabaret Voltaire on last Friday, Gina Birch from the Raincoats, John Savage, the writer, just so many people, who Wire have sort of affected them, have been up for it. So, and we've got somebody working on archive stuff as well. So we're going to have footage that's never been seen before from the 70s and 80s as well. So, yeah, I mean, I am a massive Wire fan, as anybody who knows me will tell you, and probably irritatingly so. It's like I'm co-directing this. I've been doing research, I've been writing for it and stuff. But every so often, the fan in me gets this sort of what an actor would call a Brechtian distance on it, where I think, bloody hell, they're making a film about Wire. I get excited as a sort of, almost externally from the situation. So yeah, it's called People in a Film, and if you want to chuck some money at it, the Kickstarter fund is still up there, I think. So yeah, please do.
Amazing stuff. I'll put that in the comments. I've also put the link to your book and your music show as well. So thank you very much, Graeme. Really appreciate taking the time. It's an honour. And keep up the good work. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in tonight. We will be back tomorrow night with one of my favourite albums of the year, which is Mungo's Hi-Fi and Marina P. They'll be in here on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we have the unviable Scottish females of the music industry are going to be doing some live chat and performances. And on Thursday, we've got the comedian Martin Miller live from Hamilton, Scotland to Alabama, USA. We'll be hearing what he's got to say about it. And on Friday, memory of a very funny and talented woman, Sarah Syndigo, on Friday night, and what would have been her 40th birthday. If you want to get involved, send us a message for that one. Thank you very much, Graeme. It's been a pleasure. Good luck with all the projects, and we will see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Cheers, Graeme.
Cheers, Mark. A pleasure.
Thank you.
You call that radio, more like a TV show, on almost every night. It's